Sometimes you can see an idea, an approach to this interchange that we're trying to achieve and that we are achieving. Sometimes you can see an avenue so clearly that it takes you over, so to speak, rightly, and you can use it in an astonishing way. And tonight, we're going to discuss one such avenue toward becoming a different kind of a man or a different kind of a woman. Try to see the depth, the power behind the idea that we're going to cover tonight, which is that of self-teaching. Now you set aside, for now anyway, all your books and all your tapes and all your teachers and all your great religious philosophers and Christians and Sufis and the rest of it, Zen. Set all that aside tonight and consider the astonishing avenue of self-teaching. For just 1 minute out of every day, just think of this, absorb it. For just 1 minute out of every day, you're teaching yourself 50, 60, 100 lessons. Out of your own mind, out of your own feelings, out of your own actions, out of your own responses. What you are teaching yourself is what you presently are in most cases. If you have a general viewpoint toward life of defeat and gloom, which most of you do, and have no idea of it at all because you have never looked at yourself, every time you think this defeated thought, this depressed thought, you ask yourself what you are teaching yourself to be, more of what you are. All because you're unconscious of the movements of your own psychic system. To you, defeat does not exist as a negative state at all. As a negative feeling, yes, which gives you a certain false pleasure to be defeated. You are tonight, and I am tonight, basically, what I have taught myself over the past 10, 20, 50 years. You say you were conditioned by religion, by your parents, by society, by news. You accepted it, and that became your teacher because you never sought anything outside of it. Now, that's our state. Now, very fortunately for all of us, there is a way to start teaching ourselves something else. Start talking to ourselves in a different way. One of them is the level of acquired knowledge where I can begin to gather facts about myself, including the fact that I've been teaching myself lies and nonsense all my life, accepting them as true because there was another false teaching that told me it was advantageous to want to be rich, to want to be popular with other people, to be a deceiver. I can begin to see through what I've been telling myself in my classroom at home, or in my own mind, essentially. I can begin to see through it to something else. I can begin to see the results, the outcomes of the lessons I have taught myself, all the nonsense, and see where it has put my inner life today, right now. So this would be a good point to pause very briefly for each of you to start to teach yourself something new by seeing a certain fact, which is the fact of your mental condition, your emotional condition, right now as you're sitting here. What is your life like? Pretty confusing, isn't it? Pretty bewildering. Happily, I can gain the knowledge that I can start to watch myself in action. In particular, we'll go into one particular way in which I can watch myself in action. Think about this. I can begin to see the unconscious roles I play, both in my own mental movie up here, and also outwardly to you, to my relatives, to my friends, to society as a whole. I can see that I am very rarely myself at all. I'm too nervous to be myself because you're looking at me, or you want something from me, or you expect something from me. And so I go into the unconscious role, and now I'm split. And now I'm afraid I won't please you after all. Or you'll see through my role. So our stage performances become quite hardened. Hardened to the point where we no longer see them. Not necessarily in public, to myself, my daydreams, my imaginations. To the unfortunate point where I'm unable to stand aside from my stage role and see myself playing it. I'll tell you an interesting story that illustrates this point. There was a movie made one time, and I'll put the story together as best I recall it. You'll see what I mean. There was a movie about a man who was being chased by some foreign spies, and he was in his own country, but they were still chasing him. They wanted to get the secrets from him or something, and his life was actually in danger. So he went chasing around the city streets trying to escape his pursuers down in the middle of a busy street one evening, a busy city. And he found himself in an alley, a back alley with some steps going up to a back door, and there was the villains in back of him chasing him. So he went up these back steps and quickly went in the back door there and got inside and walked a little farther in. And he saw a platform out there somewhere, and it seemed to be the place to run to because the men were possibly still in back of him. So he walked out. And as he walked out, lo and behold, he found himself on a stage, a platform. And he looked out with great embarrassment, and there were about 200 people sitting out in an audience out there. And it suddenly dawned on him. They started applauding him, and it suddenly dawned on him that he had been the late speaker. They had been expecting to come to the meeting and give them a talk on science, say. But thinking quickly, he realized what he had stumbled into, and even the chairman over on the other side of the platform came over and shook his hand and greeted him. Fast, real fast. Here he is in a strange situation with the pursuers out there. So he played the role very nicely. He started answering questions from the audience, giving a little talk. And it's astonishing how, when we want to play a role, we can generalize, we can bluff, we can be dynamic, how we can get away with it. So to end the story, he was roundly applauded afterward for giving a very nice talk on science or whatever it was. He knew nothing about it, because he was able, as we are, to play a role. And of course, after that, some way he got off. As long as I'm playing this role, I am the role, and I can never teach myself anything but that. Now, there's only one thing on earth that can awaken me from this, so that I can see what I'm teaching myself by playing the unconscious role, which is teaching me to be asleep, which is teaching me to bluff, which is teaching me to lie, which is teaching me to be unnatural, which is teaching me to be separated from myself. There's only one thing that will do it. And it's a terrible thing, but we are doing it as best we can in this class. And that thing is self-exposure. To catch myself walking from the living room to the kitchen and suddenly being aware of the heroic thought that went through my mind, so that I didn't even know I was walking from one place to another, because I was unconsciously playing this role of the hero. Or maybe you're the type, I don't know, that plays the role of the martyr, the victim. An authentic teacher, an authentic teaching absolutely must be a very shocking thing to my role. To me, the actor, to you, the actress. And when I get this shock, when you give me the shock, I give you the shock, or telling you that you're living an artificial personality, and you don't even know it, I will look at you very carefully when I tell you this, and I will see how you took the shock to your psychic system, which knows it is true. Then I will silently wonder whether your anger and your indignation and your fury, your sarcasm, your sneering, whether you are wise enough to use your sarcasm as a new kind of teacher to shock you twice as much so that you can wake up. Or you're simply going to be sarcastic. You don't even see it. You don't see the resistance to what something else is trying to teach you. After long and hard struggles on the level of ordinary thought, fighting back and forth, indecision, not understanding what this is all about, but willing to find out, because I'm tired of the stage performance, because I don't know from one minute to the next whether you're going to applaud me or drive me off the stage with tomatoes. I never know the result of it. I can just hope that it'll be okay. And to play it safe, by the way, to carry the illustration a little more, and I'm sure you'll follow it, to play it safe, I will choose my own audience, my particular church, my particular social group, my particular friends, because we're companions in evil. And we have a pact. The pact says, when I behave like an insane idiot, when I scream, when I call it the love of God when it is insanity, when I call it social justice when it is psychopathic behavior, when I call it that, we have a pact whereby you will call it the same thing, which means we're allies. So I play it safe. But maybe I get sick and tired of the pact, of the agreement I have made with you to keep me in comfort, which means I have to keep you in comfort, which means the minute you tell a lie to me about how nice I am, I have to tell a lie to you about how nice you are. And we're both devils. Maybe I'm tired of the pain, the suffering, the anguish, the self-splitting of being a devil. Maybe the heartache, the fury, the rage has become so unendurable, so hellish, that I take a leap. That I take a leap into a totally new area that I've never known before, which is a totally different kind of teacher. The teacher called thought, comparison, observation, a certain amount of logic. To my great astonishment, has brought me just to one place which I never expected it to bring me to. This shock alone is horrible to my psychic system. This first teacher that I thought was going to unite me with God and give me peace of mind and make me a nice person has done exactly the opposite of that. It's made me see what a terrible human being I really am and how I suffer from being me. But I've seen something I never saw before. I see, truly, I suffer from being me. I used to think you could make me suffer, or society could, or high prices could, or betraying people could. I see that I'm the only enemy I have. What on earth do I do next? All this reading and studying and going to the study group and working on myself. I thought heaven was going to open in front of me. Instead, it's hell. Which, if any of you have come to this state, Even in a small way, you have learned your preliminary lessons quite thoroughly, and you're ready to graduate. If you're in despair, not knowing how to use your mind next, not knowing what to think next, the marriage failed, so can't be married, that'll help. I have money, I got to pay my bills, that doesn't do anything. Prayer, I prayed on my knees like they said in the religious book. Nothing. Even suicide doesn't sound like an answer. At this point, I'm ready to be taught something not from my mind, not from thought, but from my essence. Look, look. I've come to the end of it, right? I've come to the end of it. God knows I've tried everything. There's nothing left to do but let go. God help me. Heaven help me, because I don't know what's going to happen to me, because I have no idea of where I'm going. Before I do, if I get married, if I get divorced, if I move to another town, if I get a new car, if I feel sorry for myself, I can't move. I'm at the end of myself. I'm stopped. God help me, what's going to happen next? You get to this stage and find out. Then you will no longer think about how you're going to save yourself, because there's no thought involved. You are saved when you no longer need to be saved. When you see that there's no one there to be saved and no one to save you, which is the ending of the opposites of thought. Now I've learned that I can use ordinary thought in certain ways for daily tasks, my business or whatever. But I've also learned that I can't use ordinary thought to find myself, because there's no one there to find anymore. Now, I have to do this. I have to ask you a question. When I see that there's no one there, am I going to ask for a solution to my problems? How can not me have problems to solve? As long as I existed as an identified self, as a labeled self, as a nice person, a bad person, a hero, a bum, then I had somewhere to go, which would be the opposite direction. Where's the problem? I put an end to it by ceasing to think that I'm a person who has a problem, that I'm a person at all. My essence, your essence, which is the same, knows better. And it has no problems at all. Oh, but maybe you love problems, huh? Maybe you like to scream. Maybe you like to criticize other people. You can have that if you want, or you can understand, you can teach yourself with proper self-knowledge that your life is a horror, which it is. I said your life is a horror, isn't it? I'm not talking about the financial problems. You can have those and still be free of the mess. Having seen the through knowledge, what your problem really is, which is remaining on the level of ordinary thought, identifying yourself as a person with a problem, therefore a person who can pray to some phony god you've invented, or some other human hero, a human hero. When you see the whole business, you come to an end, and so does the whole problem. Now, do you know what this is? Then we'll stop. This state that we've arrived at through hard work, this is authentic sanity. It's authentic intelligence, authentic conscience, authentic decency, authentic goodness, authentic self-command. Is it worth working for? Now I'll give you one way to do it, and then we will stop. When you are in pain, mental pain, I want you to be 10 times as pained as you are by letting go, and you will see more pain than you thought you had. Because having understood one level of pain, when that is out of the way, you'll see the second one that you couldn't see before. So it is quite necessary to be not twice as much, 10 times, 20 times as much pained consciously. Which means you mustn't resist pain in any way at all. Or if you resist it, which you will at the start, you'll come right back again to look at it again so you can see the second layer and the third layer. That is progress. May I see the hands of those of you who don't like to appear foolish? Why don't you appear foolish? You don't get it at all. I ask you, why don't you appear foolish? Why don't you be foolish? Why are you protecting it? You protect it, you perpetuate it. If you didn't protect it, it would end. When you see yourself as foolish, really see it. Look, see it. Not think about it, not fight it, not resist it, not get mad at someone who told you that you have a bad habit or whatever it is. When you see it, when there is seeing of it, without you seeing it, what happens to it? At the beginning, you begin to weaken the mechanical flow of being foolish, because you have put an end to thought, to description, to label about yourself. Look, you call me stupid. You call me stupid. How am I going to react to that? If I act in defense, just one facet alone, this is very tricky, but you listen to it. You call me stupid. I take it as me being stupid. What if I didn't accept the label of being stupid? Would there be a person along with the label at all? When I fight, I create the faults. If I didn't fight, there would be no thought, no reaction thought to you calling me stupid. Which, if I would keep it up long enough, I can't do it immediately, it's too strong, the habit's too strong. You call me stupid, boy. Don't you call me stupid. I've been called that all my life. And that's the way I've been reacting all my life, and this is why I stay stupid. There's no stupid me. By dying to it, where is stupidity? It is gone. And in its place is insight, clarity. And I know many things. Among the things I know is why you call me stupid. Because that makes you feel intelligent. So we're two sick people hurting each other. And speaking of hurting each other, isn't it a terrible thing? I'm not speaking sentimentally at all. Isn't it a terrible thing that we do to each other? Good Lord. Two scared people hurting each other all the more. Two hurt people sitting in that room hurting each other all the more. Isn't that person that you screamed at suffering enough without you adding to it? Without you hurting him more? Aren't you going to be the one to break the pattern? He screams at you and you scream back. Why don't you have the courage to break the pattern? He won't have, she won't have, but you can have. Don't expect appreciation for it. Don't expect understanding for it. You're working for yourself. You're working for your own sanity, not for their appreciation when you don't scream back. Compassion is the absence of you. As long as I want to be somebody, listen to this. You listen. As long as I want to be somebody, by enjoying the thrill of being sarcastic toward you, of hating you, of criticizing you. As long as I prefer that thrill, I will suffer from it, and I will have no decency. Can I give up the thrill, the false thrill, the self-destructive thrill, screaming at you? Which is the same thing as screaming at me. And my eardrums and your eardrums should be just about tired of being burst apart at the screams that go on inside our own heads, which you don't even see. Excuse me, you don't even hear. I'll tell you when you hear them. When your security begins to slip away. If you want to have it made with that husband of yours, and that wife of yours, and that political group of yours, if you want to have it made with that, go ahead and take it. You will live, and you will die. I said you will die, never knowing what you could have had. Why don't you shatter your security to get back to the original point by willingly seeing yourself as being as foolish as you really are. If you can do that, you can then go on to an astonishing next step, which is no longer seeing yourself as foolish, because you are no longer foolish. You're awake. You're free of the label foolish. Then you will not tolerate inwardly, and sometimes outwardly, depending on the circumstance. You will not tolerate anyone using you to degrade you. Because you will see their sickness, and you won't hang around, I assure you. You'll take off fast. In understanding, not in hatred, not in revenge, not in secret thoughts of how that other person is going to miss you. Be as foolish as you are without covering it up until you see something that we've talked about tonight. Just that much is enough. Okay, would you like to talk? Would you like to ask questions? Like to make a comment? You don't have to. You might make a list sometime at the end of the day when it's quiet and you're all alone, sit at the kitchen table there with paper and pencil and take a look at your day. Take a look at everything. Get different places where you were, down at the bus stop in the office, in the cafe, walking down the street, in the bank. And if you have been even partially awake during the day, you'll be able to write down, to put it as simply as possible, all the mistakes you made. That is, places where you were asleep, where you laughed nervously. Remember when you laughed nervously? When you had a certain tension, when you saw someone and you didn't know how to talk to them or what you should say? Or when you resented someone because they didn't behave the way you thought they should? The customer didn't buy something. The wife didn't appreciate something. Put down, you probably extend the list to 100. Put down 10. This helps you to remember them. Then the next day, you will indeed be a little bit more awake in that same situation maybe. So when the real pretty waitress comes over, you're looking at her consciously instead of from your past experiences of seeing pretty waitresses. I want to give you a work project starting now and continuing till Sunday. This will help you to get the idea. We all simply look around and look at each other for a minute. Just look at each other. Just see who's in the room. Just look. Okay, that's enough. You watch how true it is what I'm going to say to you now. Each one of you in this room notice other people quite a bit, a lot. But other people you don't see at all. Something, you watch. You watch. There's certain people in this room you never see. Mark might be an example to some of you because he's an obvious one. He's on a different age level and you don't pay too much attention to him. He's a young man. Or maybe you notice him more, whatever it is. The project is, from now on until Sunday, the rest of your life if you want to keep it up, you just start seeing things that you don't normally see, including people. Remember one time, I guess it's been a year now, you were given the project of walking down the street and noticing someone that you never ever notice, that real old lady coming out of the market with her little groceries she can hardly carry them. You never notice her. You never look at her. You're to simply watch her from now on. Put yourself in her place. You never put yourself in her place. As an exercise, to break down our own occupation with ourselves, or rather looking at the pretty waitress. You look at that old lady, that old man. You need to develop to a far greater strength than you now understand the need to concentrate on one thing at a time as an aim to understand a particular thing, the thing you're concentrating on, so that when you need to, you can return to the particular thought, the idea, the guidance. You can return to it when you need it, so that you're not carried away from yourself when a particular right idea that you have is necessary to recall. I'm talking about the need to be able to remember what you must remember when it is necessary to do so. And it'd be necessary when you find yourself in any kind of a bad state at all. Any kind of a bad state. So this morning, we're going to concentrate on one single aim, one single idea, which has to do more with your feeling rather than with head knowledge. Some meetings are conducted with the idea of giving us knowledge, facts, that we have to store up and use them properly. This morning we're going to go into a totally different area which you should be able to feel as well as see. Because you're going to take part in this meeting, perhaps in a way you've never participated in a practical experience before. Effective as of this moment, you're going to slow down everything. You're going to slow down your gestures, the way you turn your head. You're going to slow down your reactions to what you hear, your responses. Which, if you do, actually do it, oddly enough, it will produce a discomfort in you. Because you're not used to slowing yourself down. You're used to being in high gear with 1,000 thoughts rushing through your mind, quick nervous reactions, an instant conditioned familiar response to something that someone says. Which means that you are this instant, automatic, impulsive, compulsive response. Which means you can never stand outside of it to see it in order to drop it. When you are comfortable, physically, mentally, emotionally, ordinarily what we call comfortable, you never notice it. You don't pay any attention to it at all. But when you become a little cold physically, or someone says something that upsets your feelings, you notice that. You see that. Because you're uncomfortable. And you don't like the state of being uncomfortable. This morning, right now, we're going to put ourselves, until the end of this meeting, we're going to put ourselves in a state of discomfort consciously. So that we can begin to stand outside of ourselves and see that we are, in fact, nothing but a bundle of fearful reactions, of automatic thoughts, of tense feelings, and thereby take the first step to break it. We won't go into the details of it. We covered some of them last night, because if I can cease to identify with a particular feeling, that is, take I out of it, I will begin to weaken it and eventually put an end to it altogether. But for now, if you will relax physically, do so please. Drop your jaw, No tense fingers, just, which may be a strange feeling to you, you may not have done it for weeks. As a conscious act, relax. And if, at any time during the course of this meeting, there should be a silence in the room because I've stopped talking, and it makes you uncomfortable, and you wish someone would speak up, or that I would continue to speak, if you feel that discomfort, bear it consciously. Then don't speak. Don't break the silence. This is a marvelous opportunity to begin to see, to really see, the kind of a world that you actually inhabit. The world of internal nervousness. If you want to describe the average human being, just take that very simple, clear-cut word, nervous, and you will describe him or her. Nervousness simply being a state. Nervousness is a state of being. What we're trying to break here, which is identification with a pseudo-personality, which we're trying to protect or to promote. By becoming conscious of this pseudo-self, this self that says, why doesn't somebody talk? It's making me nervous sitting here, because how seldom I sit and come face to face with my own ramblings, my own discomfort. We're going to be just a little bit brave this morning. It's a small thing, believe me, but it's a good start. To sit here and see how uncomfortable we can be when the usual doesn't proceed. The usual being me speaking endlessly until the end of the period, so that there's no break, so that you can distract your mind by looking at me or by reflecting on some of the things that are said. So we'll break it. So that starting today, something other than this false personality, something other than this bundle of nerves, can meet the challenge, the event coming from the outside. So while remembering to slow everything down this morning, we will now acquire some knowledge about it. The clearer you're able to see it, and from that stage, you can then learn what it means to not identify with the pressure, that is, not let it be you anymore, which will be the end of the pressure and will be the end of all the false pleasures you're getting from feeling pressured. I will repeat. It will put an end to all the false pleasures you are getting from feeling pressured. Without your pressures and tensions, what would you feel? What would you do with yourself? You wouldn't know how to respond when someone denies you what you want. So you ask yourself, well, if I don't respond with tension and anger when you deny me what I want, who will I be? That is the fear. Why don't you find out what happens when you don't respond in your usual familiar way, tense way? Why don't you find out what happens? If you were able to do it purely, you would experience a shock A shock that would destroy all your misery, all the confusions which you are now living in, if you will bear the shock. All right, let's get back to our original point. You might want to write this down now. Frustration is caused by trying to force external events to conform to inner fantasies. Frustration is caused by trying to force external events to conform to inner fantasies. Oh, but of course, when I want a raise in pay, I want more money, I don't call that a fantasy. In my delusion and in my madness, I call it my rights. When I want anything at all from the external world, from you, of course I don't call it an illusion, because I'm not deluded. I'm a logical, sensible human being. And I have a right to demand whatever I want from you. And if you don't give me the raise, or give me the sex, or give me the companionship, I have been denied my rights, which incidentally now justifies my violence and being a vicious animal. So if I can see an illusion as an illusion, a fantasy as a fantasy, a demand made in ignorance, if I can see that it's a demand made in ignorance of what I really need, what I really want, if I can see that, I can shatter, break up completely the difference between me and the outer world. So that there's no longer any entity here neurotically, psychopathically saying, you must behave the way I want you to. And do you have any idea of how subtly we do this? We don't do it openly, brazenly. We do eventually when all restraints are gone, and then we can be as violent outwardly as we really are. Very subtly, that you must behave the way I want you to. What if you had no psychological demands on the outer world? What do you suppose, let me rephrase that. What kind of a human being do you think you would be if you had no not physical demands, I have to ask food from the grocerman. What kind of a human being would you be if you had no psychological demands on anyone? On any individual, on any group, on any society? What kind of a person would you be inwardly? You don't know, because you've not come to this state. Find out. And I'll tell you how. You find out by seeing what your demands have brought you up until now. What have they given you up until now? which will put you, any of us, through the shock we're talking about of the conscious ending of the entity, the person that says, I will be happy when I get the raise. And I'm sure you understand what happens to my happiness once I get the raise. Once I get what I want from you. Then I want another raise, don't I? Having got the ego victory of getting what I want, I am now thrilled by that victory, which makes me hungry for another ego victory. And therefore, you're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Therefore, I will destroy the entire world if necessary in order to get the next thrill. That is how afraid you are to be nobody. That is how fearful you are of giving up your artificial personality. You don't believe it at all. You don't see it at all. And this is why the shock is necessary. Say the same thing in a different way. Frustration is caused by, I'll rephrase it, by a denial of what I want from the outer world. This means that I really believe that there is a person here who must survive by having you behave the way it demands. I want what from you? I want love, what we call love. I want love from you. And I feel that if you tell me that you love me, that will give me a thrill, and then I will feel worthy, I'll feel accepted, I'll feel comforted, I'll feel like I'm somebody. I'm somebody who is loved. That is a state of violence. And I pity anyone who is involved with you if you are in this state. And I pity you too, because you're destroying each other. You remember the opening of this talk, what we're out to do this morning? Have you remembered that all along? For those of you who just came in, we're working this morning to slow everything down. All our reactions, so that we can begin to see them. Without seeing them, I can't put an end to them. So we're not at all in a hurry here right now. We're not in a hurry even to say, I have to understand everything this morning because I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. I better find out what life is all about this morning. We're not even saying that, because that is an obstruction in the way of understanding here and now. We're going to be without the entity that anxiously asks, how am I going to find this? How am I going to understand this? You recall what we said? When the questioner ends, the anxious question ends. Therefore, there is no need for an answer. When anxious thought, when mechanical thought, compulsive thought, neurotic thought, fantasy thought comes to an end through proper inner work on myself, there are no questions whatever in life. Regarding my inner state. It's all well. Everything's fine now. The only questions I have is whether we'll have rice or potatoes for dinner tonight, or whether I'll put a blue light or a green light up in the living room, which are very easily handled. Aren't you delighted? Aren't you delighted that you can become sane? Or is there anyone here in this room who thinks you are already sane? What would you like to talk about? Rudy.
This I that you talk about, that's straining and wanting things to go its way. Sometimes it's felt very strongly, like during a dream, I will wake up and I know I had a dream where I was trying to make a lot of effort and I feel very tired. I feel depleted. I felt like I haven't slept at all.
All right, now Rudy, I want you to make everything clearer to us.
The frustration of the I, of the ego, is felt very clearly, especially sometimes during a dream where I've been trying to get something done.
Yes, now that is much better. How many of you have bad dreams? How many of you have nightmares? How many of you are chased by ghosts? Again, isn't it a positive delight to know that presently we're in a state of psychic sleep which must be accompanied by horrible nightmares? But by the process of slowing down, plus others, right in the middle of the psychic nightmare, I lost her, I lost him, I lost the lawsuit, I lost my money, I'm getting older, I don't have any future. Right in the middle of the horrible nightmare, I can work to end it. Boy, I'm glad I found this out. Instead of continuing to live in it. How did it ever happen that I came to this group at all and found this out? I thought I had to suffer from these things. Everybody else is doing it, and no one ever told me any different. My neurotic friend reads all these religious and spiritual books and philosophical books and goes to church and goes to meetings. And for a long time I said, this friend of mine is trying to find the way out. Maybe if I go with her to the group or read the books, it'll help me get out. But every time I look at her face and his face, because I know what he or she is really like. I know the hell he or she is in. It reinforces my fear that it may all be another false trail. And then something happened. Something happened. The light was so dim at first I could hardly see it. In fact, I didn't even know it was a light at first. Something happened that said, I personally, without reference to my friend, or to the book, or to that teacher, or to religious doctrines, or social activities, without reference to that, I don't know what it is, and I don't know what's going on, but I sense that in some way I can break the nightmare. I don't get it at all, because I'm in a nightmare 99 and 9/10 of the time. So now I will tell you that what you dimly sense is a marvelous fact. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? This vagueness back here that isn't a part of the usual madness, confusion, and desperation. I'm telling you that this dim part is right. Don't lose it. This is why we're here, to strengthen it. See, when you're in a nightmare at bedtime at night, and this mind is overtaken by the ghosts and goblins, and the horrible creatures trying to break into your psychic home, we don't know it's a nightmare because we are the nightmare. How can I see it when I am it? There's no one standing outside to say this is a nightmare. I am it. All I can do is one thing: suffer. We're here to stand outside the nightmare as often as we can, in as small ways as we can at the start, for example, by slowing things down, so that I can begin to, something that is not part of the nightmare can see the nightmare. And when there's a part of you standing aside from the nightmare, you're not in a nightmare. But you'll slip back into it a second later, because all the mechanical mad forces are still so strong in us. It's okay, never mind. We're going against it to break it. So little by little, this rightness, this kingdom of heaven within, this truth, this essence, becomes stronger and stronger, and the nightmare grows weaker and weaker. So the time comes when you see that it is actually possible for you to not be your own horrid, horrible, terrifying nightmare anymore. This is why we are here in this room this morning. One very small version of a nightmare is the absence, or rather, the lack of a fulfilled hope. You wanted this certain object, this certain aim, this certain person, and your hopes began to build up about getting it, and you worked on it, and you planned, and you contrived. You did everything possible to get this objective or this person. And just as it was within your grasp, you lost it. Marvelous, terrific, wonderful. If you could take this sort of experience consciously, which is very difficult, but the more difficult the challenge, the more gold there is in it. Just as I am about to grasp this person or this objective that I think will make my eye seem real, just as my hand reaches out, it vanishes. She goes away. The money, the contract falls through. I don't get elected. I'm thrown back into my hell, into my nightmare. But now, I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to fall victim anymore. I've done that long enough. This crushing... Now I don't know who I am. I don't have it anymore. I didn't get it. All my hopes were built up because I knew if I got it, I'd be happy. If I could work consciously on that experience, I would shatter something false. And I'd shatter it forever in a small way. Perhaps some of you who are new don't understand one particular thing that we work on here quite frequently, which is going through hell in a new way. Not avoiding hell, the nightmare, but going through it in a new way. That is, by standing aside from it and seeing that there is indeed a part of us that is not part of the hell, the nightmare. Which will eventually quench the fires and chase away the horrid goblins who are chasing us, who are trying to kill us. The nightmare is abolished, very simply stated. The nightmare behind the phony masks of being happy and confident and all that. The nightmare is abolished by working with it intelligently. What do you want to call it? Working with awareness. Not being a part of it anymore, because there is indeed a part of us that does not have to be part of the nightmare. Isn't that great? When you have conquered one very small nightmare, you have that much more strength than you had before in order to meet and conquer the next one. This is very logical on the everyday level. Just as you build your muscles with picking up weights by doing something. By doing something active for ourselves, we build strength for the next one. And you will actually be able to feel, to see, to be this new strength, which you can call on at any time you want, providing you understand what it means to call on it. And what it means to call on it is to break the flow of mechanical psychic forces, mechanical thought. A mechanical thought that fights a situation instead of dying to it in order to understand it. Will you please, whatever you do, each one of you here, will you please, starting right now, give up your love for feeling desperate? Will you please just drop it once and for all? I said, will you please give up your neurotic need to feel desperate? how you love your desperation, how you love your crying, your tears, how you love screaming out for help. Will you please stop screaming out for help? Now just stop it. And you watch what happens to you as a result of that. You will find out that there is no one there needing help at all. Okay, this is open discussion.
You talk a little, Vernon, on dreams and nightmares.
They are, let's do it very elementary, they are obviously the states of mind which we don't see during the day because all our distractions with business, with family affairs, whatever it might be, prevents us from seeing them. If I can be wide awake all day long, here in this meeting, for example, in order to see the subtle feelings that go through me. For example, I wonder if any of you ever watched one feeling that went through you during the coffee break. Even one. Were you embarrassed when you met a new person for the first time? What motives did you have for talking to the person next to you? What unseen timidity or tension did you have? If I can put an end to this unconscious stream by being conscious about it during the daytime, how will it be able to take me over during the night? It won't. So I have to be wide awake right now to catch this thought. If it's a practical thought, then I have to act on it. If the thought comes, pick up the coffee, then I have to act on that and pick up the coffee because I happen to want coffee just now. If it is a negative feeling, a negative thought in any way at all, like while we're sitting here in silence, I must say something to break the silence, otherwise I'll be embarrassed by it, or sitting and talking personally with someone, the person next to you. If I could catch that thought and deny it, not let it take, that is, deny it by not letting it take me over, I will have weakened it, and by constant practice of this, I will put an end to it. Then it will not appear in dreams anymore. Then I'll sleep very quietly and very fully without dreams. That is not the total answer, but it's a partial answer to what we're talking about. Let's get rid of the nightmares. Never mind about neutral dreams for now. Get rid of all these frightening ones. The way you are in your nightmares is the way you are during the day. Right? Right? You just don't see them. You're scared of someone in your dream. He can hurt you, he can leave you, he can do something to you, or she can. Obviously, that's the way you feel toward this person you're living with, your wife, husband, children. Let's use our daytime activities to clear our minds so that they're equally clear at night. Go ahead, Lynn.
If through the day my mind is cluttered with concealing, with hiding behind a mask, and then I'm alone by myself at night and my mind demands rest, and I want to ponder, now where did I make this mistake today and that mistake? My mind is in mental confliction, and it is a nightmare that I live through the day that I'm trying to look at when I should be sleeping.
Well, Larry, we talked about directed thinking. Remember we talked about that? Directed thinking meaning, and we advise you to do it at night when you're alone with yourself in bed, even with your wife or husband, you're alone in your own mind. Practice some directed thinking, which is simply going through your day. You see where you were taken over, where you were embarrassed by something, which meant you weren't in charge of yourself, or you made some error on the everyday level and reacted wrongly to it. Maybe you did make an error down at the office in that bookkeeping or in that typing, and someone told you about it. The big thing is not the error you made, which you can correct, but how you reacted to it. Or you felt that girl at the next desk has no business talking to you that way, or the boss could have been more tactful, or whatever. If we can indeed see where we reacted from our conditioning, from negativity, instead of from our essence, that would be an aid to correction, would it not? Because the next day when I go down to the office, I'm going to be a little bit more awake, a little bit more remembering what I have to do during the day, which is to be quite conscious of everything. How I'm going to respond when that girl who bawled me out yesterday comes over. Am I going to be tense and defensive? Am I going to say, well, how should I behave toward her? Why do you ask the question at all why you should behave? Why do you mean you want to get your proper role in place again? With a proper forced, fixed, phony smile? Why do you ask how you're going to behave? Why don't you be in essence? Then you will know how to behave. And it won't be phony. And it won't be self-harming. You should be able to walk into the most odd social situation possible for you, something that you've never done before. If you would find yourself in a situation like that, I don't know what you'd have to discover. You find yourself maybe with your family, and a certain thing has to happen where you're at some kind of a meeting, an odd kind of meeting of some kind, strange things going on. Find your own examples. You're at a parade, maybe, a simple thing as a parade, with all the blaring music and the clowns and the crowd screaming and the heroes and all that. If you could turn your attention back on yourself to not become the imposed atmosphere, that would be marvelous practice in setting yourself free. Instead of responding like everyone else does, with thinking that this is the real world out there. It's real on the physical level. Obviously, a clown in a parade is a real human being. Don't you understand that there's another world that is your world, that is not composed of all these exterior false, phony actions? Don't you understand that God really exists? Don't you understand that there is a world of truth, capital T, of reality, capital R,